Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. I am your host, Jack Chambers Ward, and I'm joined this week by a very special guest, the one, the only SEO Jo Blogs, Juliana Turnbull. Jo, if you don't already know her, you will do soon, but you may recognise her from SEO Office Hours with the fantastic crew over at Good Signals. Shout out to Mike and the crew holding down the SEO Office Hours over there. It's a fantastic podcast. We talk about that in the episode, don't worry, we'll get into more details later. You may also recognise Jo as being the organiser of SearchLondon, as well as speaking at Brighton SEO and a lot of different conferences around the UK. And funnily enough, industry events and communities is the topic of this week's episode. Jo has a lot of experience organising events around the UK and around the world and building and growing communities through SEO as well. So we're going to talk about the communities and events that we really like and the things that we have experience with. We're going to get some recommendations, all that kind of stuff. It's a really great conversation with Jo this episode. But before I get to my conversation with SEO Jo Blogs, let's have a word from our sponsors. A huge thank you to SE Ranking for sponsoring this week's episode of Search with Candour. SE Ranking is the company behind the powerful and intuitive SEO platform trusted by millions of agencies, businesses, and SEO professionals since 2013. With a robust toolkit, SE Ranking empowers SEO professionals around the world to excel at executing their strategies. Key features include the Rank Tracker, which provides accurate and up-to-date keyword rankings, as well as the competitive and keyword research tools that offer deep insights into market trends and competitor strategies. The platform's AI-powered SEO insights leverage advanced machine learning to deliver actionable recommendations, streamlining the process and letting you outrank your competition. The Backlink Checker and Monitoring tool enables you to analyze backlink profiles and monitor their status, ensuring you've got a very healthy link building strategy. Earlier this year, SE Ranking released a massive data quality update to the Backlink Checker tool, so it's definitely worth trying now in 2024. And coming very soon, SE Ranking will introduce the AI results tracking solution that will help you see how you stack up against your competitors in Google's AI-enhanced search features. The tool supports you in identifying your rivals in the snippets, analyzing their content, and detecting new opportunities for strategic decisions. Click the link in the video description down below or in the show notes if you're listening to this episode. And a huge thank you to SE Ranking for sponsoring us here at Search with Candour. You can go to AlsoAsked.com and check out this fantastic and unique intent research tool. As we probably already know, search intent is at the core of everything we do as SEOs. Even if you're not directly working in content, understanding what your users are trying to achieve through their searches is still pretty important. I think we can all agree. On top of this, Google has told us that it takes up to 9 searches for users to complete their goals. This can be a pretty hard picture to capture, to be honest, with traditional keyword research tools. So what if you could get hold of up-to-the-minute questions that users have asked that have been clustered by intent by Google themselves? Well, that's exactly what AlsoAsked actually does. AlsoAsked mines and organizes Google's People AlsoAsked data in real time, showing you the next most likely question your searchers are going to ask. Best of all, it's completely free. You don't even need to create an account to try out AlsoAsked. Of course, if you do find it useful, there are paid options as well. We have the free, we have the light, and we have the pro options in terms of accounts that you can subscribe to. At the touch of a button from these accounts, you can download not only the questions people are asking, but also the answers Google has selected, the website URLs, and the titles that are ranking for those answers as well. AlsoAsked has the world's only API for People AlsoAsked data, meaning you can combine this data you're pulling from whatever questions you're asking directly into tools. You can combine it with things like ChatGPT to really supercharge your content briefs and transform the way you write content at scale. Go to AlsoAsked.com and check out this fantastic intent research tool today. My guest this week is a digital marketing consultant with over 15 years of experience working with clients from around the world. She is the founder of Turnbull, which is a remote digital agency. a co-host of the fantastic SEO Office Hours with Mike Chidsey and the Good Signals team over that. Go and check it out on YouTube if you haven't already. I was actually on that a couple of months ago as well, but it is a fantastic YouTube channel and fantastic content you can go and check out. She's also the organizer of SearchLondon and the Barcelona edition of SearchLondon coming up very soon as well. Welcome to the show, SEO Jo Blogs.
Hello. Thank you very much, Jack, for having me on the show today. What a great intro.
I felt like I had a lot of. You do amazing intros on the SEO Office Hours, so I feel like I need to bring my A game for a good intro.
Ooh, the pressure. Yeah,
I know
thank you very much.
Post off right now.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we do the SearchLondon, and then last June I started the Barcelona edition, and actually during the pandemic I started the online version of SearchLondon. So it means that wherever you are, you can still log into SearchLondon and meet and network with us.
Amazing. Obviously, right at the end of the show, I'll say, I'll give us all the link stuff. But listeners, already viewers, you can go and check out links in the show notes for everything Joe and I are going to talk about throughout this episode. We're going to talk all about events, industry events, and how to build a global community by running industry events, which is something I think you have quite a lot of experience with, and something I have some experience with attending and now helping run Search Norwich here with Candour as well. It's going to be an interesting topic because I think a lot of us attend a lot of industry events and kind of understand, the very basics, kind of the surface level stuff. But I'm really interested to get into the behind the scenes and kind of get into the theory behind it all and dive into it. And I guess why is this topic?
So for me, this topic is important because when I was younger, we moved to many countries around the world. So reaching a global or international audience has something that's always been interesting for me. As we moved around so many times, my sister and I had to make new friends and connections, and we didn't always have a community. Our support network was our immediate family, which is our parents. We never lived near any extended family, and for most of our childhood lives, and most of that actually, we were on different continents. So it was really important to have this sort of community for me. Also, we didn't really fit into like that little square box. Some people say like, where are you from? We would say when we moved to England, we're English. And like, no, you're not. You're American. And we were stood out as the American twins. So I have an identical twin sister. Yeah. So, and then actually some people thought I was adopted because my dad is from the north and my mom is, she's from London, and they both sound and look different to us. So yeah, they were just like, are these your parents? And anyway, so I really was looking for the support network, and I became a direct account director at a young age. I think 20, just turned 29. I didn't know the company. It was an agency for me, a new agency for me. It was a global agency in London, and I was managing a team for the first time. So I had come fresh in, and then I had a boss, but he was not sympathetic or supportive. He was from a PPC background and instead did a blame or shame to many people in the team, and not just me included. So I was like, well, this is not really how you manage people. This is how you get rid of people. I'm looking for a supportive place. Where can I go? So I had to look outside of work, really. There wasn't actually any mentorship either back then, which I know there's a lot more at the moment, which is great. So that's why, all those reasons is why, having this global community is really important for me.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of my kind of understanding of the SEO industry. Like, I know I mentioned on the show before, but my previous agency was very closed off. It was very kind of like, everyone's a competitor. We don't want to work with anyone. It was all very like kind of, we do our own work and we worry about our clients, and we don't go to events or anything. Like, we don't want to share any of our secrets or anything like that. Thankfully, moving to Candour has been a nice opportunity to understand and kind of grow within the rest of the SEO community and meet people like yourself, meeting people at Brighton, people at events and all this kind of stuff. And I think that is a huge part of so many people's, especially early on in the career, right? I think that's a huge part of that learning process and the opportunity to not just learn from the speakers, but also network and all this kind of stuff. There's so many elements that go into, I think, the positivity of events for me, and how much that can change and shape your career, shape your life, help you meet new people. You could potentially get a new job from that one person you bumped into at an event a few years ago. There's so many different elements and different opportunities there. I think it's a really nice place that we have so many of these different events. We mentioned yourself running SearchLondon. We run Search Norwich. We mentioned Brighton SEO, Women in Tech Fest, like all these amazing events. And we'll dive into a bit more details later on in the show. But I think it's an amazing position we're in the industry now, that we now have so many different events around the world, around the UK going on, that you really can find something that will work for you in a way.
Yeah, and I would also say definitely in the past 5 years, we've seen an increase in events. I know, of course, there's a little bit of a blip with the COVID, but always outside, things moving outside of like the bigger cities like the New York and the London. I set up SearchLondon not because I think London is the best. We had moved there for my dad's job, and it was very expensive to leave. And I was living there still because I still couldn't move. So I thought, well, I'm going to create this group. And actually, it was run by Judith Lewis before. She had this networking group. I think she'd run 2 events. And I think she stepped down, or she said she was stepping down and passed it to me. I can't remember the exact details. It was like nearly 14 years ago. And I wanted to create like a safe space for people that could ask questions without being judged, where we could have first-time speakers. Because I remember when I was trying to get a job after uni, it was like, you need experience. It was like, well, I just finished uni with all this debt. I really need to get a job now, please. and then also in the whole, when you want to speak at these industry events, they're like, well, you need to have had spoken at other events before. But I was like, no, this is like the catch-22 again. So SearchLondon was a safe place where you could network with other people, meet other like-minded. As you mentioned as well, career opportunities, that's something that I'd like to diversify into more. But place where people could speak from different backgrounds, not just a big brand, and different cultural backgrounds too. And also, just people of any age really that want to learn about digital marketing. It's any aspect. It's SEO, PPC, and social media.
Yeah, I think that kind of cross opportunity, like you said, whether it's different cultures, different ages, different roles and responsibilities, you're coming from the PPC side or the SEO side, whatever it is, there are so many opportunities to learn just from the other attendees, and just having conversations with people and being able to bounce ideas off people and stuff like that. I've always, and I know we talked about this when we did the live podcast I do with the SEO Mindset guys, like how to make the most of attending an event. And I know when I was first attending, and especially something big like Brighton SEO, I was like, I need to just make the most of it. I need to attend every possible talk I can, cram everything in as much as I possibly can. And by the end of the first day, I was exhausted, and I was like, I have not networked. I have not really met anybody. I've just been talk. And I think you're totally right. Having the opportunity to have those conversations and just almost those quieter moments where you can just bump into somebody and be like, oh, hello. I know you and I have done that, Brian SEO, before. I'm like, oh, hey, I recognize you. Hello, it's you. All that kind of stuff. Those little nice moments can end up in like, let's go and have lunch together. Let's have this thing. And you end up having this brilliant conversation that can then, influence the next piece of work you do, or like I said, career opportunities and all this kind of stuff. I love those little moments that don't seem like a big selling point of an event, but actually can, for me, end up being the nice little piece of gold, the magic moments that happen there.
Yeah, and also for you mentioned we're lucky to have these sort of industry events. I think it has grown a lot. And another aspect that's quite important with these industry events is that, especially if you're like a solo person, so you're a junior and you don't want to ask the bosses, or if you're a boss and you can't ask anyone because you're the boss or the senior, going to these events is great, because then you can actually discuss issues and topics that you have. Or if someone's talking about it, you're like, oh, I'm not the only one. So it helps you to feel less alone. And it's also important, of course, if you're like, a freelancer, or maybe you specialize in one field and you're really struggling to sort of finish or work through a problem. There's a lot of different industry events that people can attend to, and people maybe go there through different routes. I started going because I was blogging for a website called Seda Digital, and I met loads of people that way, including Jackie Hall and Bas Vandenveld. I blogged at the events, and I was like, okay, I'm going to speak at all these events. Write at all these events. And through that, I was able to meet people. But you're right. If you're writing all the time or you're attending all the sessions, you do miss on the networking. So it is important that you spend time to network with others. And I really like the fact that at Brighton SEO, we have different events besides just the big party. I can't hear that much in the music or in the clubs. I'm sure a lot of people can't hear that well. And I was really excited to go to my first SEO Live podcast, SEO Mindset, in April this year. That was fantastic. And you got to speak to a lot of people without like the noise in the background. WTS Fest was great as well. They had smaller meetups before, before they did the big WTS Fest. And sometimes I quite like going to the smaller events because then you can speak to more people and get to know them better than actually some of these bigger events, because you can get lost in it, especially if you're new.
Yeah, there's definitely something I talked about with Josephine Rudolph a few weeks ago, that kind of like dipping your toes in and pacing yourself and making sure, like you said, you don't suddenly jump into the biggest search event in the world and then try and attend everything and try and do as much networking as possible and try and network while there's a live band on stage 10 feet behind you, which is always very difficult. But I think there is that really nice spot. Like you said, so many events now are brilliant at catering to those smaller parts of it, where you can have a quieter room, have a smaller thing. Meeting up beforehand, I know, is something Josie talked about a lot as a thing that really helped her get into the kind of like the mood for it, of like, okay, rather than meeting 500, 1,000 people at once, in suddenly walking into a room where it's all this noise and all this buzz, and exactly, you pull a face like that, we all go like, oh god, overwhelmed. You can actually do that meetup beforehand and have that kind of, I now have, like you said earlier, a safe space. I know a handful of people, a couple of people, another friend, whoever it might be, to be like, whatever happens, I know I have this other person I can rely on, this other group of people I can rely on to. If we need a break, we can go and take a break. If we can, we can escape the big crowds and the noise and actually have conversations. And I know for me, that's been a big part of, like I said, my growth personally. That was a big part of my initial ADHD diagnosis, was talking to other people in the industry and being like, we're all hanging out together and you're the only person that doesn't have ADHD, Jack. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's probably a thing. Maybe I should look into that. That's not a coincidence, probably. And then from the career side of things, like being able to work with other people, guests on the podcast, all this kind of stuff, all these networking opportunities. I love having those little quieter moments to balance out with the big, keynote speakers and these inspirational big moments. You can then balance out with the smaller kind of low-key events, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And that was a very good podcast you had with Josephine earlier, a few episodes ago.
Yeah. So what has been your experience with kind of growing an event like SearchLondon? So we're kind of thinking about starting the event and then growing it, and like you said, taking it over from Judith nearly 14 years ago now. What has that experience been like for you so far?
Yeah, well, it's been very positive, actually, because I was in a place where I worked for an agency, global agency, and there was a lot of people in my team and other teams that I worked with who wanted to come. So that was great. And we also had, Google speak at one of our first events. And, back then it was actually quite affordable to hire a room in London. It's a bit different now. So we didn't have to meet a minimum spend or anything like that. So there's a lot less pressure to, need to sell tickets. Because at the beginning, everything was free, actually. But as I've grown it, and obviously prices have increased, I have started charging, because I once did an event and I think we had, let's say 120 people RSVP on Meetup, but then only 50 people came. And the number of venues in London that are for over 60 basically drops by half, but the price is double. So you need to know how many people are coming. So doing something with Eventbrite or Universe, having people buy tickets there, has helped, because then if there are 60 people that register, they will all come. So we had our our latest Search Barcelona actually in May, and we had 41 register and 41 came. So that bought a ticket. So
amazing.
Yeah. So in terms of like starting then an event, I would say you look and see what else is out there in the marketplace. There's always going to be competition, but it's how you can do it differently. And I would say in growing it, think about where you want to be in a few years' time if you have that time to think about it. For me, it was just something that I wanted to do every 6 to 8 weeks. Then we had COVID, so then I moved online, and I moved to Barcelona. There was something that happened in 2016 that, you know, I was like, well, I'll move to Europe, and then I can, you know, try and stay here for a bit longer. And so I thought, well, I could, you know, do the Search Barcelona or the SearchLondon edition. I decided I didn't want to do another website or another Twitter profile or another LinkedIn because it was going to be like too much. You know,
I don't blame you.
And so just kept everything. And then also just be open to other ideas, I suppose, as well. So I've always liked to have like a focus for the event, but actually I did have a fellow Search Barcelona attendee, David Carrasco, come, and he said, oh, why don't you do a Barcelona dinner? I had thought about it before, and someone else had sort of suggested that, but it was I took him up on that, and actually now we're doing a Search Barcelona edition dinner, on August the 2nd. We're going to do terrace drinks because there's loads of great rooftop places to go to here, and then we'll do drinks and dinner nearby or next door, and then we'll do another one in August. So it's about being open to other ideas. We're not having any talks. We're not doing a panel or anything like that. So it's, you know, we'll see what happens, but it's just nice to get everyone together really and and make the most of it. And I know that summer or August in many places in Europe, it's like everything's closed and, oh, why are you organizing it? But there's a lot of people that maybe can't go away. It's a really expensive time of year and we want to do stuff. So, you know, the hotels are more empty in terms of event venues. And as long as you can pre-book and you will commit, and maybe you go visit the venue and say, look, I have this many people coming, they will allow you, of course, to come, especially when they know that you are living here. You're not just like going to be like, oh, it's just for a touristy thing. Of course, nothing wrong with touristy things. It's that we're doing it. They might want to see regular customers.
Yeah, definitely. I think that element of introducing, and we're then kind of combining the community and the industry event side of things, is bringing in that kind of local side of things. Like you said, just having a chill evening can be an event in and of itself. You don't have to have speakers and have it all be very formal and all this kind of stuff. You can have a relaxed hangout. And as I said earlier, and I think many people will agree, like that's when a lot of those really interesting conversations can happen, when the pressure is off and you can kind of just hang out and have those conversations, right? And I think it's a brilliant idea to bring it to different communities. Like Norwich is not the tech hub of the UK. I don't listeners of yours outside of the UK, we are not the tech hub of the UK. We are considered pretty backwards here in Norwich. And I think that was kind of a conscious thought when Mark started Search Norwich. I think it was 2018, 2017. Was like, we want to show that Norwich has all this amazing stuff going on. And I think it's a similar thing from me being completely ignorant and being very British here. Like, I don't know if Barcelona is a tech hub, if it's like a industry leading place, or if it's, you know, something completely different. But having an event there and having something happening kind of shows like, oh, there must be something going on there. You're proving to the rest of the world that this is a cool place to be, right?
Yeah, well, actually, it is seen as like an entrepreneurial part of Spain, but the taxes and the social security payments don't reflect it. So England is still one of the best countries in the continent of Europe. I haven't looked at Estonia yet, but in terms of setting up a business, in terms of taxes, in terms of social security payments, in terms of the benefits of running a business. In Spain, it is not that way, but I chose to live here, and I wanted to live in Barcelona because outside of the tech hub, because it's international city, global community, you know, you've got the beach, which means the weather is not too cold and not too hot. And then you've also got, it's very well connected to other parts of Europe. So it's easy to then attend. And it just so happens that there's a lot more events happening. But when I first moved here, there wasn't that much. We have International Search Summit that is coming up on November 14th at the World Trade Center this year. But when I went to Barcelona, that was happening twice a year, May and November, and they didn't have as many people. It is run by WebCertain. But now I think their last event, they've also done International Social Summit in May this year, and last May as well. That was the first one they did, International Social Summit. And I think they might have, they've had maybe 400 to 500, I don't know exactly, last November, but it's definitely grown. And as we've seen, there's been other events also happening as well. There's a lot of e-commerce events happening. There's one in June. I will find the link to that one. It was all about the e-commerce events. I think it's SEO. No, I'll have to think where that was. But it's not, it is up and coming. Of course, you've always had, it's called Shop Talk Europe. So that was in Barcelona this year. You also, of course, it's home to Mobile World Congress. It's been home to Mobile World Congress for many years. But I think now we're seeing a lot more marketing events pop up, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. I think International Search Summit, hopefully I'll be going in November. So viewers, listeners, SEO Jo Blogs, I'll see you there. Hopefully bringing my wife as well is the plan, so we can spend some time in Barcelona afterwards. So that should be interesting. I'll be able to finally introduce my wife to the world of SEO. Unless she has no interest in it whatsoever. But I think that's a real key part of it, where you can see all of these other events going on, right? And you can see, like you said, you have long established stuff, you have new things cropping up, you have things that are specific niches. Mentioned Shop Talk Europe there being focused on the e-commerce side of things. For me, that's been a really interesting part of, like I said, getting to know the industry a bit more and exploring those events and seeing. I think this is true for a lot of people in terms of their careers, and I think this has become more and more true for events as well, where you have to kind of niche down a lot. Like you mentioned, International Search Summit focused on international SEO stuff, then Shop Talk being focused on e-commerce. I think there is an opportunity for a lot of those smaller events to then carve out their own little niche in that aspect, in that area. Even if there are other events going on in that part of the world, there is still an opportunity there for other events to go on, because every event is going to be different. Every event is going to have different speakers, different attendees, different vibes, all this kind of stuff. And I think there's plenty of room, is what I'm saying. Don't get disavowed, listeners, if you are thinking about starting your own event and then realizing, there's too many around. It's too crowded already.
Yeah, exactly. Because when I first took over SearchLondon, I did have to check a lot of times that it wasn't coinciding with other events. And then it came a time where like a lot of the different like meetups stopped, and I didn't have to check as much. And now it's come back up again. So just in terms of the shop talk, that's like huge, massive. It's thousands to attend, and people come from all the world for that one. International Search Summit, they actually did it in 7 different cities when they first came. They started, I don't know if it was 2011 or 2012, but they've now, it's focused solely on Barcelona, which is great for me. And actually Turn Global is sponsoring. We've always supported them. And in terms of other events popping up, so we have one called Search and Stuff. It's run by Yağmur Simsek, and she is doing a conference in October in Turkey, but she also organizes, of course, other dinners and picnics and other events as well. So yeah, she noticed that there was a gap in the market and started working on Search and Stuff. So there is always an opportunity, but it's just, what can you offer differently, or maybe in a better way than what is out there?
Yeah, definitely. What kind of advice would you have for people who are thinking about starting their own events to stand out now? What can you do differently? What are those little individual things that you can make different to make yourself stand out from the crowd?
Well, I would say I give a big hats off to Arish, because she's done it great, wonderfully.
As always on the show, hats off to Arish.
She's built this global community, which she started in June 2019. I knew it was going to be big, and it's massive. What she did is she focused on making sure that there was a supportive community for women or for non-males. people that all people that identify as women or non-binary, and it was something that, to be honest, I didn't really think about doing because I went to an all-girls school, so I was very much like I wanted to have it for all genders. But what she's done has been brilliant because she's honed in on some of the elements that, let's say, people that identify as women feel in our industry, and she's supported them. So, for example, there's the Women in Tech SEO mentorship program. They also have a newsletter now that goes out every single week, and it features pieces, articles, and interesting articles and blog posts from women in the industry that have written for the newsletter. So she's always amplifying and promoting other women in the WTS community. And I think that's very key in hers. She also has the WTS Way. I won't say everything about it because you can go and check it out on the website, but she's been very focused on basically being supportive and supporting a certain group of the population in that. If you are going to be doing a certain event, make sure yours stands out from the crowd. So perhaps, I can stand out, make SearchLondon stand out more. I said it was always going to be a platform for first-time speakers when we didn't have that in the industry. I want it to be for people from different backgrounds, work and cultural, those looking for support and want to learn more about search. But going forward, I want it to also be a place where we can help people to get jobs, have companies come in to help attendees with, their CV. Because if you're in Europe, let's say, the CV is different to the UK, like you put your date of birth on. I don't know why, but you do. You put a photo of yourself.
I'm always amazed by the photo. That always blows my mind every time I see it.
No, we can't do that. Yeah. So that's what I'd like to do. But I need to sit back and sort of reflect and try and promote that element a bit more because, it's always been sort of first-time speakers, people from different backgrounds, and I really want to reach more, not just people in London. Hence, why I do want to continue with the online event, which is why also I've decided to continue with Mike on SEO Office Hours. I mean, he invited me to come in next November, but I like the fact that we can reach more people. So going back to your question, how to make it stand out, see what's out there in the marketplace and see what you want to focus on and niche down on, because I think we can all get very distracted. Like, okay, we're all going to be about everything because I want to target this people, this group, and make sure they come. But maybe just focus on one element and then grow from there.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned SEO Office Hours. I think the big differentiating factor for me is that it feels like a community because we're doing it live. It's on Zoom. It's not like a pre-recorded podcast like we are now. We're recording this and this will go out in a few weeks. You can actually have people live in the chat there contributing and being part of that community. And I think that's why I first started listening to SEO Office Hours. I think it might have even been a LinkedIn post from yourself that I first discovered it through. And I think that's what separated it for me from a lot of other SEO podcasts and kind of like YouTube things and like the webinar kind of things. It feels like this panel that has a community behind it, and you can get everyone from me in the chat to John Mueller in the chat and everyone in between, and it feels like this really nice collaborative contributive kind of thing that separates it from a lot of the other podcasts. And again, hold my hands up, separates it from us here at Search with Candour. It is a different vibe because you've got 4 people on the show. Everyone is asking questions, everyone is answering questions, and I love how you and Mike and the guests will all kind of contribute together. It doesn't feel like a one-person show or a 2-person show. It feels like a fully collaborative, contributive kind of thing. And I think the live element to it of join us through Zoom and come and watch us record is a really cool thing to then, like you said, separate yourself from the rest of the other events. It makes it feel more like an event than just a come and watch us record a podcast kind of thing. And that's kind of the similar thing we wanted to do when I teamed up with Sarah and Tasman for the SEO Mindset as well. Like you mentioned the live show in April that the guys did, being able to pass the mic out to the audience and be like, do you want to share your thoughts? Do you want to share your questions? Have it become a bit more of a community thing rather than we're just going to talk at you for 40 minutes and then see you later, bye. Having that element where it's a bit more back and forth. And I think for me, that has become a lot of what live content has turned into. A lot of the webinars and live podcasts and stuff, I think, have been so successful in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm glad that they enjoyed the show. Yeah, I mean, I was really happy that Mike invited me on the show back in November last year. I mean, I couldn't really walk or stand for large periods of time, so I couldn't really attend events. And I think that really humbled me. If I'm not able to get out, that was temporary, maybe just 1 year. But some people can't actually attend events through a disability or through visa or through expense, or just not able to go because of other commitments. So I really like SEO Office Hours because it can reach everyone. And that's why I also want to attend more of these podcasts, such as yourselves, or Emini was doing one as well. She came on your show before.
Yes, SEO's Getting Coffee with
SEO's
the guys
Getting
over at Vixen. Yeah.
Yeah, Vixen
I
Digital.
mean, it's amazing.
So that was great. And then obviously SearchLondon is online too. So I think online events are really, really good, even though we're outside of COVID. So if someone's looking to start an event, maybe they could start a type of a podcast or a type of sort of networking event. There was a platform called Remo that I used as well, and you can actually virtually meet up with other people at tables, and then you have presentations like this type of format as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is a big element that a lot of people kind of underestimate, is that online event stuff, because you see obviously the big in-person events, they get a lot of hype, they get a lot of marketing behind them, all that kind of stuff. But I've attended quite a few things. Like I attended Search Africon, which was the first event run in Africa by Iber Jonathan and her team there. It was an amazing event that I just obviously did not attend. I'm in the UK. I did not fly over to Africa to attend, but it was an amazing event. I knew some of the speakers who had been guests on the show before. Iber has been on the show before. We've had Lily and we've had Iber on the show before as well. It was amazing to see these guys in their element and be able to pull something off that felt, I was speaking to about this, it felt impossible a few years ago that someone could do this, and then being able to, I think it was like $10 a ticket for the online side of things. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to pay $10 to just get all these online talks and experience this event and all that kind of stuff. And it still felt like I was part of it, even though I was thousands of miles away here in the UK. Being online and being part of the chatter in social media and stuff while things are happening still felt like an event that was worth attending. And I still learnt from the speakers and all that kind of stuff. It felt like a really nice event to... And I think a lot of people will be like, I can only do it online. That's not quite the same. I think there's a lot of value in online events that people underestimate.
Yeah, exactly. I know that obviously when we had COVID, like people were shutting down events. And I did ask quite a few companies, I asked a few conferences that had shut down. And I said, are you going to do an online version? And they said no. And I was like, well, why not? And so that's why I did Turn Digi, which was my own little YouTube show, and I had people from all over the globe coming in and speak about something. And then I set up Tea Time SEO when I was contracting for Authoritas, and we did that actually 6 weeks, every day for 6 weeks at tea time, English tea time at 4 p.m. And then we did it once a week, and we had loads of people come on the show from all over the world, different cultural and work backgrounds. And it was great just to have 30 minutes to chat about different elements of SEO. So yeah, online is still very much important because many people can't get out. And I was really happy actually. Iber came to my Search Barcelona event in October last year, and Search Turn Global was one of the sponsors for Search Africa, and I was really happy that she decided to go ahead with it because we had been having some initial conversations about it, and it looked like a fantastic event. I would have loved to come, but it was the same time as International Social Summit and also my dad's birthday and my birthday, and I couldn't leave the country. So
didn't fancy a birthday trip out to Africa then? That would have been nice.
That would have been good. I've never been to Nigeria. I would have liked to have gone, but hopefully soon I can.
Yeah, definitely. I think let's talk about that kind of community element side of it. And I think something I have found, again, coming around from speaking things like the first ever Search Africon and SearchLondon being a long-running series of events, how do you take that kind of, oh, it's an online event or it's an in-person event, and turn that into a community? What's the kind of push there between just having a few attendees to an event and actually building that community to you?
Well, I would say that I never thought about a community. I want like a supportive network. I think, what Outreach has done is great, having this private Facebook group for women in tech SEO, and then Slack community as well. That's great. I didn't do a Slack community. I can't see, in terms of how would you turn it into a community, I think it's sort of being in touch with other people, sharing interesting news, promoting other people, amplifying what they have done, but not just getting in touch because you have an event. So there's a lot of people that are my friends from the events that I've run, through SearchLondon, I mean. And actually through SearchLondon, that's how I met Mike. And then Mike invited me to come on the show. He actually was helping me when I was in Australia with SearchLondon, him and Tim Sheed and Russell McGathy and another lady, Luella. And Tim Sheed's been supporting me for a long time with just co-hosting the live events, in-person events. So in terms of a community, I would say if I was to do it again, I'd probably, take a massive leap out of a Regis book, and maybe do like a Slack, maybe do like a private Facebook group. But I was not really into that much Facebook, and so I was kind of like trying to do things. I said that I do so much online, maybe I'll just sort of focus on the in-person events. And of course then we had COVID, and we had GDPR. So yeah, I think in terms of sort of creating a community, we have a WhatsApp group for Search Barcelona for some of the dinners, but that's still something that I'm going to be working on. I may look to do a newsletter, so that I can everyone can keep in touch with what's going on. But again, if I'm doing a newsletter, it has to be different to what other people are doing. So how to expand your community, I would say go to some of these events and connect with other people. So through SearchLondon, I met others, and I'm now part of their communities. So Women in Tech SEO, the Digital Marketing Union run by Dan White, which is great. It's a platform and community for those that are freelancers. Through there, I believe that's where I met Vera Jonathan, or maybe I met her through the Chima's FCDC, although I'm not a member of that, but I've been supporting them. So sometimes it's like blurred lines. Where do I know that person from? But I would say if you want to expand a community, go to other events as well. I didn't necessarily do that out of like, oh, I need to expand my community, so I'll go to other events and join other communities. No, it just came. It just had happened that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a key part for me. Like I said, attending different events and just being authentic with people and being open and honest about, oh, I've been struggling with this thing, I've been thinking about this thing. And like I said, not going in with necessarily the plan of, I'm going to build my network, I'm going to build this community, and I'm going to recruit you and that person over there, all that kind of stuff. I think just going in and having those conversations can be a brilliant way of just kind of naturally doing that, and getting advice from people like yourself, being far more experienced than me in events organization and stuff like that. Having those conversations with people to be, okay, I've started doing this thing, I'm new at this thing, who are the people I can turn to for advice, who will support me along the way? Like, supporting FCDC has been a huge part of what I've been trying to do here at the podcast as well. Had a lot of members and graduates from that program come through and be on the podcast, because it's a cool thing I want to support. I have no ulterior motives. I have no agenda. I just want to support cool people and interesting things and share new voices in the industry, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, like not having an agenda, because when also companies were thinking about getting involved with a community, let's say Women Tech SEO or the FCDC, or Search Africon, I think a lot of companies are like, oh, what am I going to get out of it? And I think the other thing that they should be thinking, instead of that, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to pay it forward. I want to help and support someone else. I'm not going to necessarily look at, okay, I've got this many extra percentage increase in likes or interactions or email opens or visits to my site, yes, of course you will get that, but that might take time. I would say, Turn Global, my company, we're quite new. I mean, I've set that up in Spain, but I ran my freelance business in Australia and the UK. And Spain is one of the more difficult countries to do that in, just of the tax and everything. But I still support, other events like the FCDC or Search Africon. And I'd like to donate, my tickets when at WTS Fest. So I'm not expecting anything from it. It's just sort of paying it forward. I'd actually like to do more for other community events. But I have to keep quite a lot back for taxes. Once my accountant says, "Oh no, you've paid all your taxes," okay, great. Okay, now I can do this, and now I can do this. So.
I think we need more people doing that in the industry, and like I said, I think we're in a very good space. I think a lot of people like yourself, like a Reed, like so many of the people who are organizing these events and people who are running agencies, freelancers, it doesn't matter. There are so many supportive people who are now paying it forward and giving that, like you said, donating tickets or sponsoring events and all this kind of stuff. And I think even in the 4 or 5 years I've been in the industry, being aware of the industry and attending events and stuff, it's been a big change and a big growth from just the handful of years that I've seen. I think we're moving in a positive direction. I try and keep this podcast as positive as we can. I feel like we're moving in a positive direction. Do you feel the same way from your 10 more years of experience than I have?
Yeah, I think it's great. I really wish that there were things that were like mentorships back then. I think I heard about mentoring if you're maybe like a CEO or an MD, and then you have someone help you. But I didn't
a business
really
consultant kind of thing.
Yeah, but I didn't hear it more like if you're not in that position. So I think, there's a lot more support out there, which is great. I think that there's a lot of people amplifying one another, and I do believe that Women in Tech SEO is a big part of that. They're always amplifying, and when there's other events, it's more about collaboration. They don't see it as competition. And I think if more people have that attitude, then it's, there's a lot of space in our industry for other events, other newsletters, other online webinars, other podcasts. There's a big opportunity, and it's great, especially when there's online versions, because that allows us to reach a much bigger audience. And we're online anyway, so it makes sense, I think, to continue with the online events, because then we can connect with other people.
Exactly. It's digital marketing. We're already digital, so let's be more online and embrace that side of things for sure. Like I said, I think a lot of people are hesitant to do that and just kind of focus on the in-person thing. So I appreciate the kind of be pushing towards like, let's be more online and more understand the value of that and understand the prospects of online events and how powerful they can be. So let's wrap things up. My last kind of little talking point and question: how to build a returning audience for your events, which I think is something, from my experience now, co-running Search and Orange with Mark, I think this is the thing we struggle with the most. And I think this is a very common thing. Also true for the podcasts I've hosted over the years. You have that initial growth of like, oh, it's cool, it's new, it's sexy, yeah, great. And then 6 months down the line, people might forget about you. Or 10 months, 12 months, 3 years down the line, everything's kind of quietened down. So I think bringing in those audience members who will really, really come back over and over again, to use a podcasting term, the subscribers, if you will, of the events, I think is a really important step for a lot of events organizers. So what has your experience been with, what advice would you give to events organizers and people attending events to build that returning audience?
I would say have good topics and speakers. So I always wanted to focus more on the topics in SearchLondon, and I did actually have a lot of first-time speakers that some people didn't know that they were first-time. I didn't necessarily announce that because I don't think that's always fair, and I don't want to have people be like, oh, first-time speaker, what are they like? And, well, should I go or not because they're first time? I actually wanted to have more first-time speakers than big brands, but you do need to have a bit of a mix. Yeah, because there's some people that work for the big brands, and so, what they're saying they can apply, whereas it might be different if they're like a startup company. I would also say ensure that you give people a voice. So that is for the first time speakers, but it's also for attendees. So at SearchLondon, what I like to do is have talks, but have them talk for 15 minutes, and then we have Q&A. I don't like the event's normally from 6 until 10 or 10:30. I don't like to have like the whole evening for speakers. For the talks, I like to have enough time for networking. So that's what I mean by give everyone a voice. And well, that's my third point about giving time for networking. Another one is make it easy to attend. So whether it's online, make it really clear, like what the link is. You can send a couple of emails to remind people. If it's in person, make it quite easy to access. Unfortunately, many places it is not that accessible. Like they're upstairs. I admit a lot of the SearchLondon events were upstairs. There was no elevator. But try and also make it like easy to access within the city. So it's not like everyone has to drive there, because not everyone can drive, or it's like within walking distance. And then also, don't forget to promote yourself. So give people enough time. You can, do it like 4 weeks in advance, then 3 weeks, then 2, then give a reminder. And when you're at the event, I don't think people expect, they're going to have drinks and things like that. But just make sure that there is, it's a chilled environment for people to come in. There's enough chairs for everyone if they need to sit. And when it comes to, for example, for like drinks, make sure that there is not always alcohol drinks. Like we're having terrace drinks on August 2nd and dinner, but I don't necessarily relate drinks to alcohol drinks. I think when I moved to the UK, everyone's like, oh, but we're not going to drink alcohol. I'm like, no, it's drinks like soft drinks, and we don't have to have alcohol all the time. I don't think
that is the habit of the British people, I'm afraid.
So we're just admiring the view, sitting in a chilled environment, having a few refreshments, and then going to a restaurant. So just keeping it chilled. And also the other thing I would say is, just don't put too much pressure on yourself. Appreciate what you have anyway. Don't try and compare yourself. Like I have a twin sister, identical twin sister. We're always compared when we were younger. Like what's your sister doing? Oh, you're like that because of her. And so, I appreciate what other people have done in our industry, but some people have put a lot of their own time into this. And a lot of people doing events in their free time. So we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They might be, working, long hours. And I did put a lot of time into SearchLondon, it's true. And you need to see what works for you in terms of your work-life balance to what is the result. What can you do? And if you're finding one approach is not working, maybe sit back and review. And another thing that I've only started recently doing is how to get returning audience. Ask them, get a feedback. Do a survey.
Yes. Yeah, we found that really, really useful at Search Norwich, having that, sending out an email to all the attendees like 24 hours afterwards, being like, what did you like? What didn't you like? What could we improve? How did you feel about the one really interesting element we found was, how did you feel about the level of the talk? So was it like too hard for you to understand? Was it about the right level? Was it too easy for you to understand? And how actionable and practical is that talk for you in your role, and what kind of role do you work in? So like, this talk is relevant for agency people, but maybe not so relevant for in-house or freelancers, or the other way around, or whatever it is. I think that feedback is so key. And like you said, don't worry too much. Don't compare yourself to others. Like, we can't all be Arij and Women in Tech Fest and taking over the world one step at a time, but we can push ourselves in our own ways and bring our unique perspectives and all that kind of stuff. And I think that is where that element of making it easy, all the things you can control, right? The chilled environment, make it as easy as possible for people to find the event, giving people time to get those refreshments, grab that beer or can of Coke or wine or whatever it is, then they can have those moments in between the talks to chill out. There's not just that constant barrage of noise and speakers. And I love that you said about Q&As as well. I love the idea of Q&As when we do that, for the audience to have that ability to contribute, and you feel like you are part of the event a bit more, right? You're not just there as just, I don't know if you've ever felt this way, you kind of just feel like one of the numbers of like, oh, there's 500 us and I'm attendee 324 and who cares, I'm just a number. Whereas if you're able to actually ask the speakers questions, ask the other people attending questions, that can be a huge part, and that'll be the bit that you remember the most.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, how do people feel at the event? Create a safe space for everyone, and make sure that everyone has a voice, and make sure it's accessible. Like, have the chairs around, or simple things like, don't have the music up so loud, or make sure everything's very visual, with the screen. So there's loads of tips and that people can do, but they can always ask us, ask you, ask me if anyone has any other questions.
Absolutely. If people do have questions and do want to get in contact with you, how can they follow SEO Jo Blogs, SearchLondon, all the amazing stuff you're doing? Where's the best place to find you?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, they can follow me on Twitter. It's just SEO Jo Blogs. They can follow me on LinkedIn. It's just a J Turnbull. And website is SearchLondon.com. And you can also come and join us for SEO Office Hours, 9:30 a.m. BST. And that's on the Good Signals website. I've shared it in the chat. And we're also part of other communities as well. So I look forward to connecting and speaking to some of you.
Please do, listeners and viewers, go and check out what SEO Jo Blogs. SEO, like I said, Office Hours is an amazing podcast and community event. I keep calling it a podcast. It doesn't feel right calling it a podcast. A live stream event, a community event. I don't know.
I think it was, I would say it's a podcast. Yeah. And it was really great. We've had a lot of people from Google join us, which has been fantastic. And then Mike and I got invited to join them on Google Search Off the Record, which is amazing. So I really enjoyed being part of that show, and we're looking to continue it for the foreseeable future.
Amazing. Listeners and viewers, I'll put links for absolutely everything. There'll be a chock full of links down below for all the different events, all the different topics, all the different things that the amazing SEO Jo Blogs and SearchLondon, all that kind of stuff you can go and follow, check out all the different events we've been talking about. So check out the video description, link in the show notes, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really, really fun conversation.
Thank you very much, Jack. Thank you to the viewers and listeners for today's episode.
And that concludes another episode of Search with Candour. Thank you so much for watching or listening right until the end. You're the real ones. I appreciate you sticking around and even watching my little outro at the end here. It's been a fantastic episode. I hope you've enjoyed my conversation with Jo. I think I have a lot of links and a lot of resources, so please do go and check those links in the show note or the video description down below if you haven't already. There's lots of amazing events and amazing communities we recommended throughout, and I've got a link for all of them. So if anything caught your ear or caught your attention, please do check it out in the video description down below. I'll be back next week, as I always am, with another show, another fantastic guest, another podcast, and Mark and I will be reuniting in the not-too-distant future to discuss the latest SEO news as well. If you want to keep up to date with all the latest SEO news, please go to coreupdates.com. That's Mark and I running our weekly newsletter, which comes out every Monday morning, just like this podcast does. It includes this podcast, includes Mark's SEO tips, and it includes about 8 of the most important SEO news items from that week, so you can start your week off properly with a brand new episode of the podcast and lots of news to dig into and summarize and discuss in your Monday meetings and all that kind of stuff. Until then, and until next week, thank you so much for listening, and have a lovely week.